He didn't even call me. After everything, deployments, surgeries, years spent dodging bullets and burying brothers in arms, I opened my phone and saw one message from my father. "Don't bother coming this Christmas. We've decided it's best you stay away this year. No, how are you? No, we miss you." Just a text that read like a severance notice from the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. My name is Emily Harper, and from wherever you're hearing this, stay with me. Have you ever walked through hell just to come home and realize your family would rather keep the door locked? The British Army taught me how to shut off emotions, but I swear that message hit me harder than a mortar blast. My mom didn't chime in. My brother didn't say a word. It was like they'd all signed some unspoken agreement to exile me right before the holidays. I sat in my little one-bedroom flat in Oxford, staring at the blinking Christmas lights I'd strung across the window, wondering what I did to deserve this kind of cold. The flat was a far cry from the barracks I'd known, cramped, with a leaky radiator and a view of a grey alley. I'd moved there after my discharge, hoping to rebuild a life near the family I thought I still had. The lights were my attempt at festivity, but they only mocked the emptiness. I traced the phone screen with my thumb, rereading the message, each word a fresh wound. My fingers hovered over the reply button, a dozen responses flashing through my mind. Anger, pleading, silence. I typed one word, fine, and I meant it. Not the fine you say when you're hurting and want someone to ask again. No. This was the final kind. The "you won't get another chance to hurt me" kind. I closed my laptop, deleted the airline ticket I'd bought 3 weeks earlier for a flight to London, and poured myself a glass of red. The wine was cheap, bought from a corner shop, but it was all I had. I raised the glass to the empty room, the lights flickering in reflection. "To family," I said, my voice hollow. The silence swallowed it. 5 days later, I woke to 10 missed calls. 1 from my brother, James, 1 from my dad, William, 4 from my mom, Margaret, and 1 from their lawyer, Edward Clark. That last one made my heart pause, a cold grip tightening in my chest, because by then, it was too late to undo what I'd set in motion. Too late to unsay what they'd said. Too late to unwrite the letter I'd mailed. They thought I'd come back like I always did. Loyal, forgiving, hungry for scraps of love. But this time, I wasn't the girl who left. I'd come home wearing a different kind of armor, and they were about to learn just how dangerous a daughter can be when she finally stops trying to earn her father's love. Let me take you back, before the silence, before the text, before the betrayal that cemented everything. I was 18 when I enlisted in the British Army, a skinny kid with a stubborn streak and a need to escape. My father didn't hug me at graduation. He just said, "Try not to embarrass yourself out there." That was his love language, criticism disguised as advice. I can still see him standing by the car, hands in his pockets, his breath clouding in the chilly Oxford air. I'd hoped for a nod, a smile, anything, but William Harper didn't do warmth. I didn't join to make him proud. I joined because I needed to believe I was worth something, because home never felt safe, not with the way he looked at me, like I was a burden he hadn't asked for. Growing up at 23 Willow Road, Oxford, England, was like living in a house of mirrors, every reflection distorted, every word a potential trap. William was a man of rules and temper, a former factory foreman who treated family like employees. Margaret, my mom, was his opposite, soft-spoken, always smoothing edges but never strong enough to stand up to him. James, 2 years older, learned early to stay in Dad's good graces, mimicking his silences and siding with him to avoid conflict. I was the odd one out, the girl who asked too many questions, who didn't know her place. By 16, I knew I had to leave. The army was my way out, a promise of structure and purpose. I didn't expect it to become my home. When I made sergeant at 23, I flew home that Christmas, my uniform pressed, my heart foolishly hopeful. I'd survived a tour in Afghanistan, led my unit through a night ambush, earned a commendation. I thought maybe, just maybe, William would see me. Instead, he met me at the door and pointed to the snow-covered driveway. Clear it before you come in. No congrats. No, we're proud of you. Just grab a coat. I did it. My boots crunching in the snow. My breath steaming. My pride swallowing the hurt. Mom was a ghost of the woman I needed, wringing her hands in the kitchen, whispering, "Just don't make him angry." James, already Dad's shadow, didn't even look up from his phone. I went to bed that night in my old room, the wall still papered with faded flowers, feeling like a stranger. So I played the good soldier, called every birthday, even when William didn't pick up, sent flowers on anniversaries, though Margaret only texted a heart emoji in return, mailed checks when the roof leaked or the car broke down, hundreds of pounds from my meager pay, wired from bases in Iraq or Cyprus. They never asked where the money came from, never asked what it cost me, just cashed it and sent an emoji back. Sometimes not even that. Still, every year I hoped. I hoped for one Christmas where I'd walk into 23 Willow Road and feel like I belonged. One holiday where my seat at the table wasn't an obligation, but a welcome. Those hopes kept me going through the worst of it. In 2019, during my second tour, our convoy was hit outside Kabul. Shrapnel tore through my left arm, and I spent 3 weeks in a field hospital, staring at a cracked ceiling, wondering if I'd ever hold a rifle again. I called home when I could, my voice hoarse from painkillers. Margaret answered, her voice thin. "Glad you're safe. Love, but don't talk about that around your father. It makes him anxious." I hung up, the line dead, my heart heavier than the bandages. When I recovered, I framed my commendation and sent a photo to James. He replied with a thumbs up. That was it. But that year, this year, I had different plans. I was finally done with service. I had my discharge papers, a modest pension, and a tired heart. I wanted to come home, bake cookies with Mom in the cramped kitchen, hear James's updates about his new job at a tech startup, maybe, just maybe, get a pat on the back from Dad. I'd bought the ticket, packed a suitcase, even wrapped a small gift for each of them. A scarf for Mom, a book for James, a bottle of whiskey for Dad, the kind he liked. I pictured us around the table, the fire crackling, the air warm with something like love. Instead, that text. So I set the plan in motion, because 5 years ago, during one of my rare leaves, Dad had asked me to co-sign something for the house, a second mortgage. I was barely 24, fresh off a deployment, my arm still scarred from Kabul. He said it was just a formality, a technicality to help with refinancing. Your family, he said, the closest he'd ever come to affection. I was young, exhausted, desperate for his approval, so I signed without reading. Big mistake. For them, yes, because now I own 51% of their house. They didn't know that yet, but they would. Very, very soon. The irony? I'd forgotten all about that mortgage. It wasn't until after Dad's message, after that text detonated something cold inside me, that I went digging through old military email archives for a distraction. I was looking for a photo from a base party, anything to pull me out of the spiral. Instead, I found it, a digital copy of the co-signing document, flagged as executed, signed by William Harper, signed by Emily Harper, stamped, witnessed, legal. I clicked through it, my pulse quickening, and there, in legalese, it whispered something I hadn't caught before. In the event of primary borrower default or voluntary transfer, the cosigner assumes controlling interest over the property until full loan maturity. Controlling interest. I sat back, stunned, the laptop screen glowing in the dark flat. While he'd been so busy cutting me off, he forgot that on paper, I wasn't just his daughter. I was his co-owner. No, scratch that. I was the majority owner. He needed my signature 5 years ago because of his weak credit, a fact he'd never admitted, but I'd pieced together from Mom's nervous asides. I'd signed, like a fool in uniform, thinking it meant I mattered. Now, it meant I owned his pride and joy, the house he always bragged about, the red brick Georgian at 23 Willow Road, Oxford, England, with its ivy-covered walls and bay windows, the same house he told me I wasn't welcome in. Oh, the poetic justice was so thick it almost tasted like syrup. That night, I called a real estate lawyer I'd met during a seminar on base in London, a sharp woman named Clara Evans who'd served as a reservist. Hypothetically, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. What happens if a cosigner holds majority interest and the borrower tells her not to come home anymore? There was a pause, then a low chuckle. They shouldn't have told her that, because if she wants to take control of the property, she can, legally. It's hers to command. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the ceiling, a plan forming like a storm. I didn't tell my family anything. Instead, I drafted a letter, not a dramatic one, just the facts, calm, polite, formal, effective immediately. I will be exercising my controlling interest as cosigner and legal partial owner of the property located at 23 Willow Road, Oxford, England. All legal rights and responsibilities will be enacted through counsel. You will be contacted shortly. I printed it, signed it, and mailed it certified. Old school, intentional. I wanted them to open it together, to feel the weight of the paper, the finality of my name in ink. Let them sit around their precious dining table and realize what they'd done. Then, I booked myself a quiet cottage for Christmas in the Cotswolds, a stone-walled retreat with a view of rolling hills. Snow was falling when I arrived, dusting the fields in white. The fire crackled in the hearth, and I turned my phone off, letting the silence wrap around me like a blanket. I spent Christmas Eve alone, sipping tea, staring at the flames, replaying every moment that led me here. The deployments, the checks, the silence. I wasn't angry anymore. I was resolute. 5 days later, I turned my phone on. 10 missed calls. 1 from James, 1 from William, 4 from Margaret, and 1 from Edward Clark, their lawyer. I smiled, not out of revenge, but clarity. For the first time in my life, I didn't need their permission to come home. I was home, because they were living in a house that legally belonged to me. James called first, his voice tight with panic. What the hell is this? Dad's freaking out. He's talking about lawyers and eviction notices. What are you doing? I took a sip of my coffee, the mug warm in my hands, and stared at the snowy hills outside the cottage. I'm executing my rights, I said calmly. Same way Dad executed his decision to tell me not to come home. You're seriously gonna kick them out over a stupid text? No, James, I'm not kicking them out. Yet. I let that hang in the air. He sputtered, his voice rising. Come on, this is Dad. You know how he is. Yes, I said, my tone ice. I do. That's why I'm doing this. Because here's the thing, sometimes the people who hurt you the most never think you'll fight back. They rely on your silence, your need, your hope for crumbs of love. But I didn't need crumbs anymore. I had a contract. And for the first time in my life, I had power. The next call was from Edward Clark. He tried to sound casual, but I could hear the panic in his clipped vowels. Miss Harper, I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. Your letter arrived rather abruptly and understandably caused a bit of alarm. I interrupted him, my voice steady. There's no misunderstanding. Mr. Clark, the documents are valid. I have the original. I've reviewed the terms with my counsel. I am now invoking control. A beat of silence. Then, well, I'm sure we can work something out. Perhaps a buyout, a reassignment of the note. That's when it clicked. They were scared because William had defaulted again. Missed payments, probably thought the bank would go easy, as they had before. But now he was staring down the barrel of his worst nightmare. Me, I leaned back and whispered, I'm open to discussion, but the first condition is that he calls me himself. Not through you, not through James. I want him to ask. Edward fell quiet. He knew what I was doing. It wasn't just about the house. It was about acknowledgement. I hung up and looked around the cottage. There was no tree, no stockings, no smell of cinnamon or roasted ham, just the crackle of the fire and the soft hum of wind outside. But it was peaceful, and that peace, I earned it. With scars, with years, with silence. They didn't know it yet, but I was done being the soldier daughter they could ignore. Now, I was the landlord, and Christmas was about to get very, very uncomfortable back at 23 Willow Road. Christmas morning, I woke to another call. This time from Mom. Emily, she whispered, her voice trembling like a kettle on the edge of boil. Please don't do this. Your father's furious. He hasn't slept. James is barely speaking. Can't we just move past it? Move past it. I almost laughed, the bitterness rising like bile. Mom, do you remember what he texted me? He told me not to come home for Christmas. Not this year. Not next. He said I wasn't welcome anymore. Do you know what that does to someone who's been deployed for nearly a decade, who sent checks from war zones, who never missed a call or a card? Still silence. I pressed on, my voice low but firm. I was in a desert on my 26th birthday, got ambushed on the road in Kabul, called you after I made it out alive. Do you remember what you said? I don't, she whispered, her voice breaking. You said, well, I'm glad you're safe, but don't talk about that around your father. It makes him anxious. And there it was. The truth they all danced around. I wasn't their daughter. I was their inconvenience, a ghost they accepted only when I was invisible. Mom, I said gently, I'm not doing this out of anger. I'm doing it because I finally realized I was never going to be welcomed back unless I brought something to the table. She sobbed then, raw, helpless sobs, and begged me to reconsider. But I didn't cave, not this time, because what they didn't know was that I had already filed the legal paperwork, a notice of possession change, scheduled for delivery that afternoon, and I'd hired a property management company, run by a veteran friend from base named Tom Reynolds, to take over operations. They'd show up the next day for a formal inspection, not to kick anyone out yet, but to let them know this wasn't their home anymore. That afternoon, I sat by the fireplace in the Cotswolds, wrapped in a thick sweater, watching the flames dance. No gifts, no family, but there was peace, and justice, and something sweeter than any holiday carol: control. I didn't blow up their world out of revenge. I simply reminded them whose name was on the deed. And this year, for once, Christmas belonged to me. Tom called around 4 p.m. Hey, we did the walkthrough. Your folks weren't exactly thrilled, but we kept it civil, just like you said. I leaned forward, gripping the phone. How bad is it? He exhaled. Cosmetically, not terrible. Structurally, leaks in the basement, unfinished attic reno, mold spots under the windows. And get this, 2 of the 3 bedrooms have tenants. College kids, maybe. Sublets. I froze, my breath catching. They rented out the rooms. Looks like it. Cash deals. No paper trail. That was it. The final confirmation. They hadn't just cut me out of the family. They'd turned my legal property into a side hustle behind my back, all while texting me I wasn't welcome. My stomach turned, not from anger, but insult. They used my name to buy the house, filled it with strangers, then told me I didn't belong. But then Tom mentioned something else. One tenant's different. A young woman, attic room. She seemed scared. Not like the others. Her name was Sarah Bennett. 22, a former British Army private discharged after a tour in Afghanistan. battling PTSD. I drove to Oxford the next day. The road slick with ice, my mind racing. Sarah stood in the cramped, moldy attic, clutching a tattered rucksack, her eyes haunted like mine after my first tour. "Please," she whispered. "I have nowhere else." I sat her down on a rickety chair, the air damp and heavy. "Tell me everything." And she did. William had charged her $800 a month for that attic. Cash only. No contract. When she missed a payment, he threatened to call the police, claiming she was a squatter. He said no one could take this house. She told me, her voice barely audible, not even his daughter. My blood boiled, not just for me, but for her, for every woman who'd fought for her country, only to be exploited by the people meant to protect us. I saw myself in Sarah's trembling hands, her hollow gaze. I'd been her, once, young, broken, desperate for a place to belong. "You're not going anywhere," I said, my voice firm. "Not until we fix this." I offered her a room, free, until she got back on her feet. But Sarah's story did more than spark sympathy. It lit a fire. This wasn't just about my family anymore. It was about women like us, rejected, fighting to reclaim our place. I started sketching plans to turn 23 Willow Road into Harper House, a haven for female veterans where no one would ever feel unwelcome again. But the fight was far from over. A week later, Edward Clark emailed a summons. William wasn't giving up. He'd hired a top-tier Oxford lawyer, a man named Richard Hale, known for winning unwinnable cases. Hale claimed my signature on the co-signing document wasn't properly notarized, a technicality that could void my claim. A hearing was set for January 20th at the Oxford County Court. They thought they could outmaneuver me, thought I'd fold under pressure. They didn't know the woman I'd become. In the weeks leading up to the hearing, I wasn't alone. Clara, my lawyer, worked tirelessly, digging through every clause of the contract, ensuring our case was ironclad, but I also found an unexpected ally in Mrs. Evelyn Carter, my neighbor in Oxford. Evelyn was a retired school teacher, 70 years old, with a sharp wit and a habit of leaving homemade scones at my door. She'd seen me move into the flat, noticed the dog tags I wore, and pieced together my story. When I told her about the house, she didn't hesitate. "You're doing what's right, love," she said, her eyes fierce. "I've known your father for years. He's always been a bully. Let me help." Evelyn rallied the neighborhood, spreading word of my fight. Local veterans, shopkeepers, even the vicar at St. Mary's Church offered support, some writing letters to the court attesting to my character. Their belief in me was a lifeline, a reminder that family isn't always blood. January the 20th was gray and biting, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. I walked into the Oxford County Court in polished boots, dog tags tucked under my coat, Clara at my side. The courtroom was small but packed. Reporters, neighbors, even a few veterans in the back, their presence a quiet strength. William sat across the room, haggard but sharp, playing the victim. Margaret sobbed quietly beside him, clutching a rosary she only dusted off for show. James stared at the floor, pale and defeated. Richard Hale stood, his voice smooth as he spun a tale of a devoted father betrayed by his ungrateful daughter. "Mr. Harper only asked for Emily's signature to secure the family home," he said. "She's twisting a technicality to punish them, to tear apart a family already struggling." The room's eyes burned into me, some sympathetic, others skeptical. I felt the weight of every deployment, every scar, every check I'd sent home. Clara stood, calm but firm, and laid out the truth. The contract, William's defaulted payments, my 51% ownership. She presented bank records, emails, even a photo of the driveway I'd shoveled that Christmas. A subtle jab at William's dismissal, but I knew the real battle was mine. I took the stand, my hands steady, and didn't look at William. I spoke to the judge, a stern woman with gray hair. I signed that document at 24, straight off a deployment, because I wanted my father's approval. I sent money home from war zones, paid for their roof, their car, their lives. I survived ambushes, lost friends, carried scars, and they told me not to come home for Christmas. My voice held firm, though my throat tightened. This isn't punishment, it's accountability. Then came the bombshell. Clara submitted a sworn statement from Sarah Bennett detailing William's illegal sublets and extortion. Sarah, nervous but resolute, had agreed to testify. Her words, read aloud, described how William charged her $800 a month for a moldy attic, threatened her with eviction, and bragged that no one, not even his daughter, could take his house. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. William's face reddened, his hands clenching. Margaret's sobs grew louder. James finally looked up, his eyes meeting mine for the first time, a flicker of shame crossing his face. Richard Hale stammered, unprepared, trying to pivot to a weaker argument about notarization. The judge's brow furrowed, her pen pausing as she reviewed the documents. But William wasn't done. He stood, against Hale's protests, and addressed the court, his voice shaking with rage and desperation. "This is my home," he said. "I raised her, fed her, gave her everything. And this is how she repays me? By stealing what's mine." The room went silent, the air heavy. I could feel Evelyn's hand on my shoulder from the gallery, steadying me. The judge looked at William, then at me. "Miss Harper," she said, "do you have anything to add?" I stood, my heart pounding but my voice clear. "I didn't steal anything. He gave me this power when he asked me to sign. I sent money home from war zones, paid for his mistakes, and he thanked me by locking me out. I'm not here to destroy a family. I'm here to reclaim what's mine, and to make sure no one else is hurt like I was." I glanced at Sarah, sitting in the back, her eyes shining with something like pride. When the gavel fell, the ruling was mine. Controlling interest. Fully enforced. The courtroom erupted. Whispers. A few cheers from the veterans. Evelyn's quiet "well done." I caught William's eye as I left. "Call me yourself," I said, my voice low but firm. He didn't. Margaret reached for my arm, her face streaked with tears, but I gently pulled away. James said nothing, his silence louder than any words. I walked out into the cold, Clara at my side, the weight of victory heavy but liberating. January 2nd arrived like a cold slap. The air was bitter, the sky heavy with snow, and the driveway of 23 Willow Road was packed with 3 cars. 2 I didn't recognize. I didn't go alone. I showed up with Tom, my property manager, a locksmith, and a clipboard full of documentation. I wore a dark coat, boots polished, dog tags around my neck. I wasn't there for a fight. I was there for an inspection. Foreclosure. William opened the door, red-faced and sweating despite the freezing cold. "Emily, what the hell is this circus?" he snapped. I didn't answer right away. I walked past him, my boots echoing on the hardwood. My house. My terms. Mom appeared at the base of the stairs, clutching that rosary. James sat on the couch, pale, defeated, not meeting my eyes. I took a breath, the air thick with tension. This is a legal transition of ownership and management. As of this morning, all rights associated with this house fall under my direct control. You have 30 days to make a decision, formalize your tenancy under my contract, or relocate. William lost it. Relocate? You can't do this. This is our home. No, I said, my voice cold. It's my investment. He growled, stepping closer. I built this place, and you defaulted on it. I shot back, unflinching, and signed it over to a 24-year-old in uniform just to save your reputation with the bank. That shut him up, his face paling. I looked around, the memories flooding back. The living room where I'd sneak in at night as a kid, hoping for a kind word. The mantel where my boot camp photo once sat, now gone, replaced by a generic landscape print. Just a space with people who'd erased me. I continued, my voice steady. The illegal tenants have already been notified. If they're not out in 10 days, I'll file for trespassing. And if anyone attempts to intimidate, damage, or interfere with this process, I'll pursue criminal charges. Mom's lips trembled, her eyes wide. But where will we go? I looked her dead in the eye, the words heavy but necessary. I don't know. Mom, maybe not home for Christmas. She burst into tears, her sobs echoing in the quiet house. James stood, tried to speak. Maybe an apology. But I raised a hand. I don't need words. I needed them 10 years ago. Now, I need boundaries. The locksmith changed the code on the front door as I walked out. Snow crunched under my boots, the air sharp and clean. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a daughter. I felt like a woman who came back stronger than they ever expected. They could call it cold. I called it survival. In the days that followed, the neighborhood buzzed. Evelyn organized a meeting at the community center where I shared my plans for Harper House. Veterans, social workers, even a local council member showed up, their support overwhelming. Sarah attended, her presence quiet but powerful. She'd started helping with the paperwork, her determination mirroring my own, but not everyone was on board. A few neighbors, loyal to William, whispered about my cruelty, their words stinging but fleeting. I didn't owe them an explanation. I owed it to myself and to women like Sarah to keep going. The final notice expired on January 31st. They didn't fight it. No last-minute calls, no dramatic standoffs. Just silence, the kind that comes when people finally understand you're not bluffing. I arrived the morning after with a new key in hand. The house was empty, the air heavy with absence. No note, no goodbye. Just a hollow echo as I stepped through the front door, where I'd once stood in uniform, praying for welcome and receiving exile instead. I walked the room slowly, each one a map of my past. In James's old room, I found a duffel bag tag from a ski trip I was never invited to. The paper crumpled in a corner. In the living room, a deep scratch across the floor where the coffee table, bought at 19 with my first deployment check, used to sit. They'd claimed it was a loan, never thanked me. I stared at that scar in the wood for a long time, not angry, just aware of how deep damage can go when no one sees you bleed. In my old room, the faded floral wallpaper still clung to the walls, a reminder of the girl who dreamed of belonging. I ran my fingers over it, then let go. I didn't cry. Instead, I opened the back door, let the cold wind swirl through, and stood there with the winter sun on my face. This wasn't revenge, not really. It was restoration, of boundaries, of dignity, of a name they tried to write out of the family story. I turned 23 Willow Road into Harper House, transitional housing for female veterans, young women with stories like mine, return, rejection, and the long journey to reclaim who we are beyond the uniform. Sarah stayed on, not as a tenant, but as the program's first manager, her strength a beacon for others. We renovated the house with help from local volunteers, new paint, fixed leaks, a garden in the back where residents could find peace. When reporters came sniffing after a local outlet ran the story of a veteran reclaiming her home from the family who cast her out, I didn't tell them the whole truth. I didn't talk about William's temper, Margaret's silence, or James's complicity. This wasn't about shaming them. It was about healing me and building something bigger. Harper House opened its doors in March, welcoming its first residents. I watched them arrive, their rucksacks heavy but their eyes hopeful, and felt a weight lift. I'd found my purpose. So when people ask, was it worth it? I smile and say, more than they'll ever understand. I don't visit my family. They don't call, but every Christmas now, I light a candle on the porch of Harper House. Not for them. For me. For the girl who stood outside this house, in the snow, unwanted. For Sarah. For every woman who finds her way here. She finally found her way back, and made sure no woman like her would ever stand alone again.